Hi, everyone. We are back. We are back, and here is Jared Schmidt, one of the founders of Folkwise, one of the content creators for Folkwise, and here he is about to give you a lecture because you, beautiful subscribers, hit a subscriber goal. Jared, before we get started with the lecture, introduce yourself to the chat
Hmm?
real quick.
Yeah, hey Dom. Glad to be here. As Dom said, my name is Jared Schmidt. I'm one of the co-founders of Folkwise, and I'm really happy to be here. I do kind of feel like I lost a little bit of a bet because this whole impetus for this, if I remember right, started when we were playing Among Us, and one of our followers, and I forget their name, so if excuse me, they asked like 7 questions in a row about vampires, and that kind of spurred this. And so this is us following through on a promise with our subs. Um, so and no, but I'm really excited to do this. So like I said, Jared Schmidt, I'm a PhD candidate in folklore from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm also an adjunct faculty out here in Tillamook Bay Community College in the beautiful Oregon coast, and I do teach a class about vampires. So this is perfectly up my alley.
All right, Jared, are you ready to get started?
Born ready. So, the slides sounds good. Can you see the title page right? The title slide right now? Okay, wonderful. Alrighty, cool. So the title of my mini lecture is "Garlic as Vampire Deterrent in Folk Belief Traditions and Popular Culture." So Dom, if you hit the next slide, please. Yeah, just wait for a second. Oh, hold on. Don't play yet. There we go. Okay. So as Twilight fandom was hitting a fever pitch in the late 2000s, the Nestle company's self-described favorite frozen pizza of Canada, Delicio, premiered a commercial advertising their line of garlic bread pizza. So, with a little help from Dom, shall we see how this DiGiorno-esque company chose to do so? Dom, if you press play, please.
Okay, Dad, I'm going out.
Is Dracula picking you up?
He's not a vampire, Dad. He's goth. There's a difference.
Yeah, sure. Pizza?
Ooh, who delivered?
Actually, it's new Delicio garlic bread pizza.
Garlic in the crust. You can really taste it.
Oh, you can taste the garlic, all right.
Hi, Jake. Pizza?
Garlic?
What you say?
See? Vampire. Told you.
It's not delivery. It's Delicio. New Delicio garlic bread pizza.
What?
Dom, next slide, please.
Oh my god.
I do want to give credit. This video came from a student of mine in the fall term last year. So, Delicio here draws upon folkloric and popular culture iconography to represent and repel the vampire. For example, at no point does Jake enter the house, a potential nod to vampires needing to be welcomed across a building's threshold. The commercial's khaki sporting father condescendingly refers to his daughter's suitor as Dracula. This can be interpreted as an incarnation of the literary convention of vampires as narrative devices which disrupt traditional, more conservative family values. The daughter even attempts to dissuade her father's suspicion, informing him Jake is not a vampire, he's a goth. There's a difference. Well, yes, there most assuredly is a difference. This link has long since been firmly implanted in the mainstream subconscious. I recommend the 1983 film The Hunger. This commercial hinges on the father's freshly baked Delicio's garlic bread pizza. The word garlic is heavily emphasized, being said 5 times. Here, our middle class Van Helsing appears to have weaponized a home baked pizza, stressing the word taste, as if arming his daughter against the vampire's kiss or that of a boy whose subculture he finds disagreeable. As she opens the door, the daughter warmly greets Jake, pizza in hand, offering him a slice. A close up on the My Chemical Romance's Gerard Way lookalike shows him snarl his upper lip as he utters garlic in disgust before, in a puff of smoke, metamorphosizing into a bat and vamoosing into the night as Ray Charles's chart topper Hit the Road Jack plays. This presentation will explore why Jake slash Dracula fled at the mention and likely smell of Delicio's garlic bread pizza by briefly venturing into the macabre overlapping intersection of vampire lore and foodways scholarship. Rooted in a
Oh.
folkloric understanding and belief, this presentation will provide several examples collected by scholars of how garlic was used in Central European, especially Hungarian and Romanian, folk traditions before returning to the epitropaic reasoning for this cloved vegetable's use. I will conclude by looking at a handful of examples of how garlic is, or is not, implemented in popular fiction. Next slide, please, Tom. Deeply connected to the use of garlic in European vampiric traditions is the idea of belief. In folklore studies, we shy away from describing actions considered belief or folk belief, religion, or folk religion as superstition. The word superstition suggests a sense of value and validity, inferring a belief to be wrong. As we go forward in our everyday lives, let us remember that words have power. Therefore, I use the word belief to describe what is happening in these stories about vampires and garlic. We can identify a belief by two different elements, a custom and a narrative. The custom can be thought of as the physical action, the doing of the belief. The narrative is the story element, what you tell others about the belief, how you performed it, when and where it did or did not work. Note that not every story passed down to us about how to dispatch or ward off vampires features garlic. This is important because folklorists look for variations within a tradition, demonstrating how practices change across time and place, as well as the tastes and resources of practitioners within a folk group. Next slide, please. Okay. For the record, the vampire hunting kit on the left was recently up for sale on auction last year. So
Did you buy it?
My girlfriend's watching, so I will not neither confirm nor deny. So anyway, let us begin by examining two examples of how garlic was implemented in delivering the true death to a vampire and its victims. The accounts are taken from Montague Summers' collection of vampire attacks in Hungary and what was then Czechoslovakia. Both instances begin during the fall of 1727 and 1728, respectively, and involve a man's sudden and tragic death. The first, Arnold Paoli, was an attractive soldier who returned to his home village of Medwegna to peacefully live out his life on a farm. He had recently resigned his military post following a situation in Greece, where he's positioned at a terribly haunted spot, resulting in his company being forced to put down a vampire. Ever fearful of an early death, the recently engaged soldier died after falling from a hay wagon during the harvest. The second man, a 62-year-old farmer named Peter Plagojewicz, is merely said to have died suddenly in his village of Kiselova. Both men are laid to rest, but eventually rise from their graves, notably taking 3 days for Plagojewicz, which could potentially be viewed as a mockery of Christ's resurrection. Whereas Paoli wanders the village for 10 weeks, terrifying villagers during the winter and reportedly killing several, Plagojewicz intentionally visits his son in search of food. The farmer's son is told by friends to deny his father food upon his return. He is found dead 2 days later, and other villagers begin complaining of fatigue and blood loss, declaring the cause to be the farmer who, quote, catches them by the throat, biting hard and sucking the blood out of the wound. 9 of Kiselova's villagers fall prey to the farmer turned vampire in a week. Officials and members of the military arrive to investigate, and both men are disinterred from their graves. Each are found appearing as though recently dead, with blood smeared or trickling from their mouths. Gojewicz is even said to have his eyes wide open and glaring horribly. The trademark of hair and nails appearing to have continued growing, and signs of fresh skin were evident. Both men were deemed vampires and staked in the heart, causing blood to erupt from their bodies. Paoli's corpse is said to have released a, quote, a piercing shriek as the warm blood spouted out in a crimson jet, end quote. Paoli's victims were similarly staked, their bodies then cremated and ashes scattered on consecrated ground. Whereas Paoli's body has garlic scattered over his remains before being staked, garlic is placed in the reburied coffins of Plagojewicz's victims after they are confirmed to not be vampires. In Kiselova, the vampire problem appears to have stopped, while in Medwegna, it seems they didn't catch their main vampiric problem, as they are plagued again by the undead 6 years later. We see parallels and variations in the customs concerning the dispatching of both vampire cases described here by Summers. Garlic is placed in the graves of those afflicted or murdered by the vampire. In her off-cited 1927 essay, The Vampire in Romania, Agnes Morgocki comments that garlic is one of several items which can be used as a preventative measure to ensure the undead do not rise from their graves. She comments that garlic, as well as stones, incense, and millet, can be stuffed in the dead's mouth, nose, navel, ears, or even under their nails. This will provide the undead, upon awakening, something to chew on while interred. So think of it as a stalling tactic. Next slide, please. Garlic
It's
is
just-
also believed to keep vampires away and protect the living outside of the graveyard. Paul Barber documents instances of people wearing wreaths of garlic around their neck to protect them from vampires. Bergoki notes in Romanian tradition, vampires have specific times during which they are more active, especially around St. Andrew's Day, which is November 30th, St. George's Day, April 23rd, New Year's Eve, and rather timely, right before Easter Sunday. Dun dun dun.
Oh my god. Everybody,
ready.
we need protection.
Conveniently found at your local Fred Meyer's. It is worth noting here that in chapter 1 of Stoker's Dracula, Jonathan Harker writes in a letter dated May 4th, addressed to his beloved Mina, that as he is about to depart for Dracula's castle, an elderly Transylvanian peasant woman informed him it was the eve of St. George's Day. She pleads with him not to leave, stating that, quote, when the clock strikes midnight, all the evil things in the world will have full sway, and then places a crucifix around his neck. Garlic is also believed to keep away evil spirits and wolves, just an FYI. Quoting Mergoki at length, among the multiple precautions to protect one's house and family, she notes, quote, windows should be anointed with garlic in the form of a cross. Garlic put on the door and everything in the house, and all the cows in the cowshed should be rubbed with garlic. When vampires do enter, they enter by the chimney or by the keyhole. So these orifices call for special attention when garlic is being rubbed in. Even though the window is anointed with garlic, it is wisest to keep it shut, end quote. Here we see how belief through custom and narrative is enacted concerning garlic and the vampire. To protect yourself at special times of the year, do X because of Y to prevent Z. These actions suggest garlic is sufficient to deter a vampire even when they're at their fullest strength. Next slide, please. We have seen now that garlic is believed to help prevent vampire attacks, both in the grave and from within one's home. The question remains, what is so significant about garlic as a form of protection? Garlic is believed to possess apotropaic properties, meaning it has the power to avert evil influences or bad luck. The belief in garlic's apotropaic potential is not unique to Central Europe, as both Paul Barber and Lloyd D. Graham point out. Evidence for this dates back millennia, with Roman author and Mount Vesuvius victim Pliny the Elder noting garlic's value for turning away foul beasts in his Natural History, written during the 1st century CE. You may recall that garlic has a rather pungent odor, the result of a chemical reaction created by exposing the fleshy parts to air, which produces sulfurous allicin. In ancient China, garlic root was incorporated into mortuary rituals to help hide the smell of a decaying dead body. Graham observes this, quote, may have led to a belief that garlic had anti-contagion properties, and a similar belief seems to have developed in Europe, end quote. Vampires, or the Nosferatu, we need to remember, were often a form of explanation for why people in villages were suddenly dying in droves, in lieu of modern germs theory and the spread of virulent and bacterial disease. The word Nosferatu may even find its etymology from the Greek word meaning disease-bearing, something heavily utilized in the plots of F.W. Murnau's 1922 Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror, and Werner Herzog's 1979 remake. Perhaps, then, garlic's apotropaic quality comes down to the idea of using something especially smelly to mask or deter a different foul smell, death itself. Graham also makes a rather interesting observation about why garlic may have power over the undead. Imagine an unpeeled clove of garlic. What does it look like? Please, next slide. Perhaps the image of a carnivore's tooth, or say the human incisor, comes to mind. The connection between teeth and garlic dates way back to the 4th century BCE in ancient Egypt. And as Graham points out, a clove of garlic in Spanish is un diente de ajo, or a tooth of garlic. Furthermore, this connection is observed in Portuguese, Russian, Polish, Hebrew, and Turkish. The latter being a language the Hungarians and Romanians would have been very likely familiar with because of centuries of conflict and trade. Graham concludes that, quote, if teeth in general, and oversized canines in particular, are mimicked by garlic cloves, then garlic can be used to deflect the bite of an undead bloodsucker in precisely the same way as symbolic eyes are used to deflect the evil eye of the witch, end quote. Next slide, please, Dom. Thank you. The variation of garlic-related vampiric practices in popular culture appears to echo Central European traditions, differing from franchise to franchise. In my concluding minutes, I will discuss several instances of garlic in literature and film. There is perhaps no better place to start than Bram Stoker's 1897 Dracula. Written in an epistolary narrative structure, Stoker draws upon a variety of folkloric conventions for combating the villainous Count Dracula and his devilish progeny. After arriving in England, Dracula sets his cursed sight on Lucy Westenra, whose blood he begins to drain at night. At the behest of Dr. Seward, Professor Abraham Van Helsing, Dracula's foreign and ideological foil, arrives to investigate the ailing Lucy. In chapter 10, Van Helsing presents Lucy with a bouquet of white garlic flowers, which he shapes into a wreath for her to wear at night, and he decks her room with a pungent vegetable. We learn from Lucy's diary that the smell of garlic is delightful, and there's peace in its smell, helping her drift to sleep peacefully. If the garlic is left, Dracula is kept at bay. But this, of course, doesn't hold. By chapter 12, even though Lucy's room reeks of garlic, it is too late as she succumbs to the Count's bite. Mirroring the stories recounted by Summers and Margocki, garlic flowers are placed around Lucy's corpse during her wake. Later, when the time arrives to dispatch the vampire Lucy, her fiancé stakes his would-be bride, and our Dutch doctor beheads the corpse and fills the mouth with garlic. After Mina herself is bitten by Dracula and scarred on the forehead by a communion wafer, the crew of light chases Dracula to Transylvania. In the novel's final chapter, Mina comments that while eating at an inn near their destination, a servant notices her scar and, quote, crossed herself and put out 2 fingers towards me to keep off the evil eye. I believe they went to the trouble of putting an extra amount of garlic in our food, and I can't abide garlic. I wonder why she doesn't like garlic. Curiously, in Todd Browning's 1931 cinematic adaptation, the Count, played by the ever-debonair Bela Lugosi, was kept at bay not by garlic, but wolfsbane. Editorial choice. Next slide, please. In other narratives from the last half-century, the folkloric and popular culture traditions about what can and cannot harm vampires has been openly challenged by franchises like Anne Rice's game-changing The Vampire Chronicles and Stephenie Meyer's teen paranormal romance Twilight series. Sunlight appears to still be a vexing issue, with vampires turning to ash when exposed in Rice's narrative, with apologies to Claudia, while making Meyer's vampires sparkle like diamonds to lure in prey. Holy relics like the cross, however, have no impact on vampires in either series. Rice's sympathetic vampire Louis even refers to their fear of crosses as a rumor and sheer nonsense, stating, I can look on anything I like, and I rather like looking on crucifixes in particular. Keen-eyed viewers of the first Twilight film will even observe a cross in the entryway at the Cullens family's home. Similarly, garlic is said to have no effect on either of these reimaginings of the undead. In fact, in director Catherine Hardwicke's adaptation of Twilight, the Cullens family is shown to be expressly cooking Bella an Italian meal, a culinary tradition steeped in the use of garlic. We see in these two examples how literature and cinema is pushing back against the vampire hunting canon, forcing us to re-examine how to protect ourselves from that which we fear. Next slide, please, Dom. So, why did Jake/Dracula flee from the suburban house when presented with Delicio's garlic bread pizza? It appears that our black-clad suitor belongs to the Central European, especially Hungarian and Romanian, line of vampiric folk traditions as influenced by popular culture. Both the house and his date/dinner are protected by the apotropaic infused vegetable, garlic. Folk practices fostered and transmitted for generations have thus been given a new dynamic twist by being incorporated into a pizza dough. Jake never stood a chance. Next slide, please. I want to thank you all for joining us here today on Folkwise for this first ever mini lecture. If you want to learn more, I recommend checking out The Vampire, a Casebook, edited by folklorist Alan Dundes, Open Graves, Open Minds, Representations of Vampires and the Undead from the Enlightenment to the Present, edited by Sam George and Bill Hughes, The Vampire, A New History by Nick Groom, and The Journal of Vampire Studies, published by the Vampire Studies Association. Thank you.
Darren, holy shit! Oh my god, GG's! That was. Do you know?
Can I look at the Twitch stream now?
Oh my god, yeah. Do you know what a hard follow-up
Okay.
that's going to be for anybody else on the show?